am Sheila Walsh, Program Coordinator of the Radio Humber Diploma Program here at Humber College. Welcome to On the Radio, a webisode feature where we speak with industry experts and Humber alumni on all things radio.
Today we speak with Humble and Fred.
All right. Welcome to another episode of On the Radio. And today we're turning the mics around and having a conversation with Humble, Howard Glassman, Fred Patterson, a.k.a. Humble and Fred, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well deserved.
So they have visited us here in RBD Career Prep and talked about a lot of great things, their career. Now, first of all, I just want to mention and say thank you for all the interns you have taken from Humber College. You both might not be from Humber, but you're surrounded by Radio Humber people. Phil Hong is a recent graduate. Eileen Ross is a graduate. And then you've taken, I think there's at least 4 in the class who are part of your intern army. So thank you so much on behalf of Humber College for...
You're welcome. We're more than happy to take advantage of these young people.
Yes, taking advantage of it.
In a lot of countries, this type of slave labor is not encouraged. But seriously, though, we've been lucky and blessed, if I may say that. Not just this year's crop of interns, but over the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, there has been no one, and we've been doing this radio show for 25 years. Very few, I should say, have had the impact on our content the way Humber graduate and future Hall of Famer Phil Hong has. Would you not agree, Mr. Paul?
No, I agree wholeheartedly. And we're so glad of the intern program because if we had to pay him from the beginning, he wouldn't be there.
Well, I know he loves it and he loves the opportunity.
Yes. And we pay him now, by the way, in wonton soup.
And he would love that. You have to understand, Phil.
Yes,
that would be his joke. But he's been with you basically, we can kind of branch off into 2 areas here, but he's been with you basically since the startup of your podcast, which happened, let's say 4 years ago, 3?
October 2011.
2011. And, you guys have really owned the reinvention angle of radio. You went from terrestrial to this podcast to now being back live on the air, but on satellite radio. So maybe you can talk a little bit about owning that career and really being pioneers in brand ownership and letting it work for you.
Well, it's funny what unemployment will do to you, and I'm being serious when I say this. Howard found himself without a job. I found myself without a job, and we weren't ready to retire for many reasons. And we just decided, what could we do that we could invest a little time in and, be able to actually do a show. And the podcasting thing just seemed like the obvious thing to do because nobody was out there offering us a job. So the podcast angle allowed us to just go somewhere every day and do a show like we always had and see where it takes us. And we're lucky because we put a lot of hard work into it, did it every day, and it took us to where we are now, which is quite a bit farther ahead than we were on day one.
Yes. All I would add to that is thank you. On the first day we started the podcast as it is now, yes, it was our first kind of humbleandfredradio.com thing, but we had done in the 2 or 3 years, that was, well, how many years? In the 5 years since we stopped working together on terrestrial radio, we had done some podcasts. I know a lot of people have said we're a bit of a pioneer in this field, but we've been going back. Our first podcast was probably 2007.
Maybe, yeah.
So by the time we had by the time we had the idea of getting the band back together, as I used to say, is that we'd already done probably 15 or 18 one-hour podcasts. Every few months we'd get together with our friends and produce it and put it on the internet. And so we had a sense that there might be an audience for us, which gave us the impetus to think that, okay, maybe we could do this. But as Fred just said at the end, we had no idea where it was going to end up.
Exactly. And going in, we knew no one was really generating any revenue through podcasts. Maybe it'll be the stepping stone to something else. And I think it was in the back of our mind, if we do a good podcast, then somebody might offer us a radio job and we'll get paid to do radio again.
And it kind of all worked out that way.
Well, yes and no.
But in a way we never would have imagined.
Yeah, because we did a terrestrial show for Rogers for a brief period of time. We did the show out of Etobicoke or Toronto for Kingston. And that really didn't go so well ultimately because the people in Kingston didn't think a morning show should come out of Toronto, but that's another story. What developed is probably not what we thought the end game would be. The fact that we started to actually generate some revenue through the podcast standalone, and then from there it got some attention, and we got on to Sirius Satellite, because really day one we never thought of being on satellite radio. So it came from doing the podcast and going to work every day like it was a real job and seeing where it would take us, and this is where it's taken us.
So you obviously, another thing we'll touch on, because it clearly had to do with reputation, work ethic, because no one would have taken this podcast that you had been doing and, Julie Adam putting it on Rogers and then Mike Van Dixon saying we want it for News Talk 1010 and then Sirius coming out. So you must have had some great connections, some great work ethics. Talk a little bit about that and how important that is to really the longevity of your careers.
All those things you mentioned came true because, yes, we decided, as Fred said, we weren't going to just do it once in a while. If you look at most of the podcasts on iTunes, they're fairly infrequent. Some of the big ones, Joe Rogan records, I think, a couple times a week, Kevin Smith a couple times. And we said, why don't we try and do it like it's our radio job, just like we always did. And all those people gave us a shot along the way, but our mandate to begin with was we're going to do it every day, whether, come hell or high water. We're not going to just do it, and then 30 days later there's another Humble and Fred show. So it kind of, I know the second part of this equation is that we had brand equity. The reason all those people knew us, and the reason on the first day of our podcast it was downloaded thousands of times, is because there were a bunch of people that went, oh my goodness, Humble and Fred are back. And that was kind of a big leg up that we emphasize, but hard work's great, but some of the success that we've had, whatever it is, has come from, people identifying with us. Fred?
No, we had a ready-made brand, and that was a huge leap out of the gate, definitely, without a doubt.
Good. And you're happy where you are? Someone in class had asked, if terrestrial radio came knocking and the stars aligned and it was great. You certainly wouldn't, turn it down, but this Sirius thing, this satellite thing, it must be kind of interesting being on a national scale. And how different is it from what you're used to? Coolest, yeah.
Well, it's especially when you go to the phones and you can have a call from somewhere in Alberta and another one from somewhere in Alabama. That's pretty cool. How much good that does you, I don't know, that diversity, but it's there, so it's better than not having it. So, and in the national, we're now spinning the show as Canada's national morning show because, we are. Because there's no real.
Yeah, we think it's.
You're the ambassadors for Canada.
And by the way, we also call ourselves the legendary Humble and Fred Show, too, because we can.
And no one else will.
No one else will. No, but to, the point, I would say one thing that's cool about having a national show, and we won't get into the details. We have bigger numbers now than we ever had as a Toronto morning show because our show is heard across the country and across the U.S. But what's gratifying for me, I will not speak for him, but I can assume it's true, that it's kind of neat because some of these people that listen to us in America that think we're really good had no idea who we were. They didn't have any brand identification. They had no prior history of us. They just flipped on the station one day and there's somebody doing a show in a way that is not like Americans. It's certainly not like most Canadians, and they just like it. And so for me, I'm like, you know what, maybe this act we've been doing all these years, can travel a little bit and has appeal other than just Toronto.
Yeah. And the response sort of validated it, too. Yeah. Because believe me, there's a lot of things we would do in a day that if we worked at a terrestrial radio station, a program director might call us in and say, you guys, when you were talking about whatever, you went on too long. And it's so from that standpoint, too, it's been fantastic.
The freedom is nice.
Oh, the freedom's nice. And again, the large audience.
So we're going to wrap this up, but I want to go back to our first little conversation about someone like Phil Hong and Eileen and other interns who have come. What do you worked with you? What have you noticed about people coming in? If you were to offer advice about, what you're seeing that's positive and what you're seeing that they need to work on, not they in general, but maybe you're noticing some things, what would that be?
Well, this goes back a lot of years. ever since we started having interns, we would get an intern to come in for the interview, and a couple of times it happened like, yeah, this is pretty cool. We'll see you Monday morning at 5 o'clock. And they'd go, what? And we'd say, well, 5 o'clock. This is a morning show. And then Monday morning at 5 o'clock would arrive, and you wouldn't see or hear from the person again. So the good thing about so far with the Humber kids is they've been committed. Like, we really haven't run into that. They show up, and they keep showing up, and they do what they're told, and it doesn't matter that they have to walk in at 6 a.m. in the morning. They seem pretty committed. So that's really encouraging.
It's funny because we used to have this kind of a litmus test for a potential intern, because we worked right downtown at Yonge and Shooter, right? What's the street where Massey Hall is? And we would have a conversation. There'd be a bunch of us sitting around, our producers and whatever, and then we'd be talking to this potential intern. And they'd say, "Where do I park?" I don't give a shit where you park. Oh, sorry.
We'll beat that out.
I'm sorry. I'm positive. Sorry. You know what's not our problem? Figure it out. And now, though, we had this happen the other week. Who was there when that was? Who was there when the? Yeah. So we had can we say where that's a non-Humber intern candidate, and she came in and wasn't. I will say this about Humber kids. Everyone seems very excited when they come in. They're very polite, and they want to do a good job, and they know what's in. We give them the what they're expected, and they're very good. They seem to be able to have a conversation with grown people. We had this kid come in the other day, sat down on one of our couches, and never said hello to us, really. We didn't really know why she was there, and then Phil said, oh, that's the intern person. And then about 3/4 of the way through the show, I look over, and she's fast asleep. So if you're a potential Humble and Fred or any intern candidate, try and stay awake through the intern interviewing process.
At least the interviewing process.
Try and stay awake while that's going on.
You can fall asleep during the show, but just not during the actual
You know, if
process.
that was the case, if she really didn't know who we were and she just heard that we were taking interns and needed some intern hours, so she thought she'd be able to roll in and just rack up some hours. Well, it doesn't work that way with us, and these guys will tell you that.
Wait, remember the letter? The email said, to whom it may concern. Well, that's cool if you're applying at Hewlett Packard. If you're applying Humble and Fred, figure it out.
It's an intimate meeting. You have to be intimate. You have to stay awake, and you have to learn from guys who've been around and take their advice, right? So,
Yes.
Any final words for these people? Now, we're filming this with 3 weeks left for this particular class of 2015 to take off. Any quick words of advice for them as they embark on their journey?
And I said this earlier, just work hard, and getting a job is a job, and it's tough out there. It just is. There's not a lot of jobs, and there's a lot of graduates, and always look at it this way. Somebody's got to work in the industry. It might as well be you, but you've got to stand up and be seen and heard. My advice is, as always, if you want to intern with us, we've always got openings. Sadly, Scotty Shade's retiring. That's sad news. And remember, apply soon, because we'll be dead before you know it. This show ain't going to be around for a long time. We're 400 years old.
Humble and Fred, everybody. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.